So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kjeld van Bommel. Like Ton, I work at Holst in the Netherlands, at Holst, at TNO, which Holst is of course part of TNO as well. I work in a group where we work on 3D printing, and I would like to explain a little bit what we do on this topic with relation to food and pharma printing, which are the main focus areas for our department. Some of this was introduced by a TNO colleague in the previous section, so I won't go into much detail here. Just let me say that our department is located within the high-tech industry part of TNO, but we collaborate a lot, especially with healthy living, on the topics of food and pharma, as you can imagine. So the mission has been mentioned before, so we apply scientific knowledge to help boost the innovative strength of our partners, and we're located somewhere in between universities that do the real fundamental research and the commercial companies that really look at the final application. So we try to bring technologies from a sort of modest TRL level to a higher TRL level where it's at a sufficient level that companies can take this, absorb that into their own organizations and use it to develop new products and services. As said, I'm going to be talking about 3D printing. Most of you will be familiar with 3D printing. We've been working in that space for already over 30 years. 3D printing was actually invented in the early 80s, so it's quite an old technology from that point of view. But over the last years, it has really developed and progressed from a prototyping tool into more of a research kind of tool, but also for production it is used now. And I will show you some examples of that in a second. So our ambition for food and pharma is shown here. We want to make healthy, sustainable and affordable food available for everybody. And I should also mention that of course the food should be tasty. If it's not tasty, you can do whatever you want, but people won't eat it. In the area of pharma, we have a somewhat similar goal where we again want to make affordable, personalized medicine available for all. Here the issue with tasty is not as relevant, of course, as you can imagine. So on the menu for today, I would like to talk a little bit about TNO and our history in 3D printing. And then I want to talk about two examples where we use 3D printing for, first of all, printing personalized medication, and secondly, for personalized nutrition. And I want to conclude with a little bit of a sort of outlook and discussion on what 3D printing could mean for Society 5.0. So 3D printing was invented as a prototyping tool, and initially within TNO we were also using it for prototyping. But over the years we started to use it for more applications, and we went into the engineering part as well as the medical part. And these are areas where 3D printing is now commonly used, of course. But over the years more and more areas were added, and some of the areas that were added in the later years were, for example, fashion. There's examples of companies like Adidas, Nike, etc., printing actually shoes, but also in the areas of food and pharma. And the areas of food and pharma are the two ones that we've been focusing on for the last couple of years. So TNO, we perform research and development to help partners innovate. And I want to talk about a couple of examples very briefly. For example, here is an example of printing pasta. We met a company called Barilla, one of the biggest pasta producing companies in the world, years back. And they were wondering if you could indeed 3D print pasta. So we started with really fundamental research. Is it possible? What do you need to do for the pasta dough? Do you need to change it or not? What are the printer settings? What kind of printing technology do you need? And in the end, we showed that it was possible, and we helped them develop this technology further. And in the end, they launched a spin-off company called Blue Rhapsody, and you can now order online 3D printed pasta. It gets sent to your home. You can cook it. You can put a beautiful sauce or filling into these shapes and serve it to your family or your guest. A second partner that we still help innovate is a company called Gastronology. Gastronology is using 3D printing technology to print soft foods. So here specifically you see examples of pureed vegetables that they print into nice shapes. And the idea is that these kind of shapes are more attractive to eat than simple purees. And these simple purees are typically given to elderly people in nursing homes or whatnot that suffer from a condition called dysphagia. So they have problems chewing and swallowing regular food. So they need to eat soft foods. But it doesn't look very nice if it's just a puree in a plate. So if you give it a nice shape, it's more attractive, people will eat more and better, and in the end will be happier and live more healthy lives. So that's a very, I think, noble application of 3D printing, and we're helping them to bring this to the market in hopefully early next year. Another nice example of how 3D printing can be used to actually improve health is the company called Nourished, based in the UK, where they 3D print these kind of small gum candies. You have all these layers, as you can see, and actually each candy has 7 layers. And what they allow you to do is you go to their website and you look at 60 or 80 micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, probiotics, whatnot, and you can say, look, for my body or my kind of sports or whatever stage in life that I'm in or fitness goal that I have, I want to select these 7 micronutrients and please put those into these candies. So you get personalized, printed, 3D printed candies. They send you a nice box, they're packaged one by one, and you open each box or each little package one a day, you take one, and that's your multivitamin tablet for the day. And as said, this is personalized and this is doing really well. This company, they just opened their 2nd production site in the UK. And then an example from one of our partners in the pharma area, Merck, big pharma company, of course, most of you will know it. We helped them work on 3D printing by developing this printer that you see here, which is a powder-based 3D printer. So it uses loose powders, which can then be made into these tablets that you see here, either by shining a laser onto the powder that makes the powder stick together, or by printing some kind of binder liquid onto the powder that again makes the powder stick together. And if you do this in a layer by layer fashion, you can create these tablets. And they use this tool now in their research laboratories to do test trials with, for example, new formulations, make new shapes, new kinds of tablet, new dosage forms, whatever. So it's a very versatile tool for them to experiment within the pharma space. So we do R&D, but as you could already see on the previous slide, we also develop printers for ourselves to do the research with, but also for our partners. And here are some examples of different kinds of printers that we have made over the last couple of years. So on the left, you see a relatively small printer, tabletop printer, which is a very high accuracy extrusion printer that we especially developed for the pharma area. The one next to it, which is quite a bit bigger, and we lovingly call it the Beast because it's a very big and heavy machine. It's a very high-speed, high-power extrusion printer, and we can create a lot of force, so we can extrude very high viscous materials and do all sorts of experiments with that. The one next to it, which says upscaling technologies, that's a development we've been doing over the last couple of years because we realized that it's interesting to 3D print something, but of course you also want to be able to produce at scale. And if you can print a nice tablet or food product and it takes 15 minutes for one piece, then you can never produce at scale. So the technology that you see there has multiple nozzles, and we can print with 8 or 10 or whatever kind of number of nozzles at the same time and produce multiple copies of whatever we want to print. And then the one on the right is indeed the powder-based printer that I showed on the previous slide that we do use in food, but particularly a lot in the pharma space. So, as said, I would like to talk about 2 use cases, 2 examples of what we've done in this area, and the first one is the one of printed medication. So here's a little cartoon of what we think is actually the near future when it comes to pharma printing and the role that 3D printing can play in how people get their medicine. So here you see a patient at home, and Ton already alluded to remote monitoring, and maybe the doctor says, look, we've been monitoring your blood pressure over the last weeks, and actually what we think you need is you need some medication to keep your blood pressure under control. So you have an online consult with your physician, and they then prescribe you a certain medication. However, we think that in the future there's more and more medication that will be prescribed on a personalized basis. So it's not just a generic medication, but it's a tablet that they will give to you that is not always 100 milligram, but based on your body weight and your age, etc., will be 83 milligrams for this person and 72 milligrams for the other person. So you have this personalized prescription that the doctor gives to you. Then this personalized prescription is sent to the pharmacy. And at the pharmacy, there will be 3D printers that can indeed print these tablets on a very specific, with a very specific amount of the drug in there. So the tablets might look the same for everybody, but they will differ based on the advice of your doctor. It can also be that, for example, you get 2 or 3 drugs that you have to take a day. And then instead of taking 3 tablets, why not combine these drugs in one single, I get a clicker, great, thank you. In one single tablet. So the tablets will be printed at the pharmacy or at the hospital and then will be sent to your home, and then you can get them at your home and take your tablet once a day instead of 7 tablets a day or whatever. And it's, as said, personalized so that you get the optimal benefits of that tablet and the medication that is in there. So a small movie of one of our printers, printing, in this case, relatively simple tablets. As you can see, tablets we don't typically do a lot with the design. There's quite small shapes. And as you can see, here we're using extrusion-based technology, so we're pushing a molten or semi-molten material out of the printer and layering it into the shape of a tablet. So why is 3D printing so interesting for pharma? Well, I already talked about a couple of these points actually. We think that it's really interesting as a research and development tool. Similar to what we did for Merck, we made a printer for them so that they can easily produce new formulations, new shapes, new dosages, release profiles, etc. And that's very easy to do with it because you're no longer using molds. If you want to make 10 different tablet sizes, you need 10 different molds. And those have to be made, and then if you want to change something, you have to order a new one, etc. Here, all the variation is in the software. If you want a new size, you simply type it in onto the printer, or onto the computer, send it to the printer, and it's printed. You can also think of using these printers actually for printing onto medical products. So if you think of implants, a lot of implants get coated with some kind of drug substance, but why not put the drug substance on very specific positions? And again, on a personalized basis, different amounts for different people. Personalized medication, I just talked about that indeed. Why not tune the API, the drug dose, to the need of the individual patient so that you are sure that they get the right kinds of amount? This is very relevant for everybody, but it's especially relevant for children's medication because, of course, they're much smaller, they need much smaller dosages. And I will talk about that in a second. The polypill, I talked about that, having multiple drugs in one tablet to decrease the pill burden. A lot of, especially elderly people, have to take 3 times a day, maybe 5, 6, 7 tablets, and this is a lot of work, and people tend to mess it up and forget which one they took. Why not one tablet which combines all these different drugs? Dosing regimes, very interesting. If you have to take a drug, often you take the same amount every day. But often that's not so beneficial for the patient. So what if we can provide tablets that provide 2 milligrams on the first day, 4 on the second day, 6, 8, 10 to the final dose, and at the end also you build off the amount that you get per day. So then you go back from 10 to 8 to 6 to etc. If you can do that, then often the side effects of these medications are much, much less, and therefore it's beneficial to do that. But pharmaceutical industry does not offer this possibility at the moment. Logistics is a very interesting one. Now typically all tablets and whatnot are made in a central location, some big pharma company producing them and then shipping them around the world. If you use a 3D printer, you can think of it as a mini factory. You can stick it in a pharmacy or at a hospital or whatnot, and you can print locally on demand. So if there's a patient walking in and says, or the doctor has told this patient, you need a 73 milligram, if that tablet needs to be made in, I don't know, Europe and shipped to Japan or vice versa, this takes time. If you can produce locally, you can immediately produce those tablets and give people the kind of medication that they need very rapidly. Printers are very good also at making small batches. Pharma industry is great at making millions of tablets that are all the same. If you want very small batches, as you will need for personalized medicine, then printers are really the way to go. And you can even think of stability issues. Some drugs are not very stable, and if they need to be shipped and etc., and you have to think about shelf life, this can be an issue. Whereas if you print the tablet on the spot, people take it the same day, then possibly there's even less issues with stability of certain compounds. So I highlight 2 topics here. So indeed, tuning the API dose from children's medication and local and on-demand production. And I want to talk a little bit about that in the next couple of slides. flecainide, it's a drug that gets used for certain heart conditions. And typically, what you will find is that there's one type of flecainide tablet on the market. It's a 50 milligram tablet. And this is typically used for adults. Now, of course, there's a big variation in adults. Some are big, some are small, old, young, whatever. But it's especially relevant if you start to think about children. If it's a very small child, they might need a 4.2 milligram or a 6.3 milligram tablet. These tablets do not exist. So what do people have to do? Now they go for all sorts of different solutions. So what you see here on the left is a package where this medication is actually present as a solution in glass ampoules. And these ampoules are then drawn into a needle and given into the bloodstream. They don't want to do that, so because especially not for small children. So what they actually do is they fill a syringe and they just give it orally, as you were, drinking from a bottle, let's say, as a small child. But the taste is not very nice, and it's a lot of hassle to push this liquid into the mouth, and kids spit it out, etc. So they really want to do something different. And actually what is the case that in 50% or over 50% of children's medication, they need to change something about the tablet or whatever they are giving to the children. So they either are crushing the tablets, cutting it into small pieces, opening capsules, taking thing out, and then taking a bit of that powder and giving it. There's no tablets for children. And there's examples where you have to take a tablet and cut it into 18 equal pieces. And you can imagine this is almost by hand. This is almost impossible. So what you see on this movie is really a movie that we got from our partner at Erasmus Medical Center, where people have to open a capsule, then take the powder out and put it into a syringe that is put in an upside-down coffee cup with a hole in it, because there's no tools to do this. And you can see there's powder remaining in this capsule. Then the other one is emptied, you push it in. It's a lot of manual labor. And as you can see, it's not very precise. There's material left, there's a little bit of material on the top. And this is not... I hear a second voice, by the way. I don't know where it's coming from, but anyway. This syringe then has to be filled with liquid, has to be dissolved, and then they have to give 3.5 milliliters of this to a certain child, for example. This is done every day in the hospitals for a lot of patients. And we really feel, and also Erasmus really has asked us, come up with a better alternative, because this is not the way forward. So with Erasmus Medical Center and other partners, we have set up a project that will start actually very, very soon. We got the funding approved, where we say, okay, if we know what we need to give to a patient, especially children, then this information can be fed to the printer. The printer can then print a small tablet of what is needed, 4.2, 8.7, whatever milligram of this drug substance. And then these tablets can be given to the children. Either the medication can then be provided at the hospital, or even people can take it home and then take one tablet a day. It's not just about the printer development, you also have to think about the whole logistics. How would this work in a hospital setting? How do people operate with this printer? This is a completely new thing, so we will really test this out in a hospital with a real drug, and in the end also with real patients. And we've assembled a whole consortium of partners, not just Erasmus Medical Center, but also other partners in the healthcare sector, insurance company also, for example. And together we want to figure out how to set up such a system, which is not just technology, but it's also how do people interact with the printer, etc. And this is going to be very relevant, and if this really works, I think it could really bring about a big change in how people provide medication, especially for children. But this will also translate to everybody else, because old people need different medication from young people, women are different from men, everybody is an individual, and there's more and more attention for indeed personalized medication. Here are some examples of tablets we have already printed with various technologies, just to show you that it's not this dream of being able to print tablets. We can do a lot of things already, different shapes, putting different kinds of compounds together. As you see, for example, in the little blue-white heart, where we had two different drug compounds in the different parts of the tablet. And you can play a lot with shape, of course, and those kind of things as well. So one big difference with regular tablet production, let's say, is that normally tablets get produced on a very large scale, millions and millions. And what they do to validate that they've made the proper tablet is that out of these millions of tablets, they take 5 or 10 or whatever, and they analyze them. And they do that in a destructive way. So they crush the tablet, they dissolve it, do some chemical analysis on it, and then they see indeed it has the right amount of the drug substance and it is the right drug substance in there. But if we're only printing 5 tablets, we cannot destroy all these 5 tablets to prove that we made the right tablets. Then all the tablets are gone, right? So we have to find a different way to validate that we indeed make the tablets that we promise. And it should be non-destructive, because we make so few tablets, we don't want to destroy the tablets. So if we put all these different compounds here schematically shown in pink and in yellow into a syringe, and with this material we then print a tablet, we want to be able to say which API, which drug is in there, and what is the dose, what is the amount of the API in there. And for that, we are developing a spectral analysis method, because of course with spectral analysis you can look at all the different peaks, be it infrared or Raman or whatever kind of technology you use. And then you can say something about the type of compounds that are in there and the amounts. And we want to do that, or we investigated if we want to do that in the tablet by looking at the whole tablet, but we're also looking at the material flowing through the printer whilst we are printing it. So there's 2 ways to look at that. Can we analyze the final tablet, or are we looking at the material while we're printing and just add up all these signals and say all this that went through the nozzle ended up in the tablet so we know how much is in there. And we did some first trials now, and we indeed see that we can get a good signal-to-noise ratio for all this, because of course there's lots of other compounds also present, not just the drug material. A good signal-to-noise ratio, and we can really differentiate between the different kinds of ingredients in there and say something about the amount that is present in there. And I think this is very exciting, and it will be needed in order to be able to bring this printed medicine to market. So the pharma printing roadmap that we foresee is that it's twofold. On the one hand, there's the hospital applications and the pharma application. And I already showed you we want to start in the hospital pharmacy in this children's medication project that we're setting up there. But in the pharma, you already see that it's being used for R&D purposes. We do think that within the pharma space, it can go from R&D to more flexible production. First, again, in the R&D stage, where maybe you want to produce tablets for clinical trials or so, where you need really bigger amounts, maybe hundreds or thousands of tablets. And then after that, we really think you can really take this to flexible production if indeed pharma companies need to provide more and more personalized medication. And then they always need to make small batches, but just a lot of different small batches. For the hospital, there's a similar route. Now it's in the R&D stage, but we really want to take it to the hospital pharmacy, and after that even to the general pharmacy, so that it's not just people in hospitals that will be able to get these personalized medication, but anybody going to any pharmacy wherever you want to go. So that's what we're doing in the pharma printing space. Second example, as mentioned before, I want to talk about what we do in the nutrition space, especially the personalized nutrition, which is of course also be directly related to health. If you can provide personalized nutrition, you can provide people's bodies with what they need and keep them healthier and performing more optimally. So again, also here a little sketch about the near future as we see it, where a person, we call him Bob always, has all these sensors and technology around him that measure things about him. So there's the Internet of Things, there's smartphones, whatnot, and all these devices, and maybe also even, you know, the patches from Holster. I am sure we can include them in here as well. They can measure things, be it blood pressure, be it blood glucose level, number of steps that you did a day, whatever. All this can be measured. Bob goes to the gym, as shown on the left. He works out. You know, how many calories does he burn? He eats a sandwich. What is in that sandwich? Is it protein? Is it carbohydrates, etc.? You can collect all that data in what we call this health cloud that you see above Bob. And this is not just done for Bob, but for millions and millions of other users. And then you can use AI, and you can use data mining and all these kind of things to figure out what the effect of nutrition on health is. And then at the end of the day, Bob drives home in a self-driving car, which by then we will all have. and you can pull up some holo screens and perform a process that we call digital cooking. And then Bob creates the meal of the evening, not only for himself, but for the whole family. And the Health Cloud provides him with information based on the AI that processes all this data and tells Bob, well, you know, you ate this already today, you should finish off the day with this kind of meal so that at the end of the day you've had all the nutrients that your body needs. And the same goes for Bob's wife and Bob's daughter that all sit here around the table and then enjoy their meal, which may look the same for everybody, but will differ in the components that are present. So maybe more protein for Bob and more carbohydrates for his wife and more fiber for his daughter, whatever you want. We see that in the future not everything should be 3D printed. I mean, you know, a tomato is great already. We put a cutting board in this image. You can just cut a tomato and eat it. But for example, especially things like meat replacement products could be interesting to print. There's less and less meat being eaten. People are looking at alternative protein sources, and if you want to eat those, you typically need to process them into something that has a nice texture, a nice bite, nice flavor, and a nice look. And we think that 3D printing has a role to play there. So a little movie again of a 3D printer, extrusion printer again, and here we're printing some kind of bakery product, a cookie. You can see again in a layer by layer you can make all sorts of designs. Actually we have this cookie in our stand outside, but you can go crazy with the design. Whatever you want can be printed almost. These printers that you see here we all developed ourselves, and you can see that here the cookie is also baked, and this is a big step actually. It's not only the printing, but also the recipe needs to be bake stable. You can imagine if I print an Eiffel Tower out of cookie dough and then stick it in the oven, it will melt and you will end up with a flat cookie again. So also the recipes here need to be adapted in order for the shape to hold its shape after baking and during baking. And if it's baking or steaming or whatever, but you can imagine that the post-processing, the preparation of the food has a big influence on the shape. And you need to take that into account. So on personalized nutrition, we started a project with the Dutch Army some years ago, and they were really interested in, can we provide our military personnel with nutrition that helps them perform more optimally? So if you can provide the right kind of nutrients, will they do their job better? Will they stay fitter longer? Will they be able to stay awake when they are on guard during the night, etc.? Of course, there's no such thing as the soldier. There's lots of different people again. People are different. There's women, there's men, there's whatever. No children, that not. But you can also imagine that the duties that they have differ very much. So the guy that you see in this picture here, he's with the Dutch Special Forces. So they typically do like very physical kind of labor. So, you know, they're running around in the field with a 40-kilogram backpack or so. But the army also employs people in the logistics department that just sit behind the computer all the time and that have to be focused on what the information that they're processing. So very different needs. And you can imagine that if you can provide the right nutrients, then these people can do their job better, but the type of nutrients will differ per person. So we did a first project just to check if people would be willing to eat 3D printed food, or would they say, oh, this is strange, I don't want to eat this. People were very enthusiastic. These guys say, look, you know, if I can decide what's in that snack, it's good because I can perform better. If I can ask for extra protein, and it's also strawberry flavored because I like strawberry, I'm happy. So the first project went really well, and then the army said we want to follow up on this project, and we really want to go to a scenario where 3D printers will be available for us, so that in the future we can provide this nutrition, and not just on a laboratory scale, but we really want to think about how to take this forward. So TNO, please organize a project with other partners on board, equipment, ingredients, manufacturers, etc., so that we can really take this forward and create an ecosystem. So here's just a small image of a publication that we also did on this actually, where we checked indeed how they experienced the 3D printed food. So the next step that we were asked for, we've called Project Imagine, and this project started about 1 year ago. So the goal is to really create fully personalized nutrition. Here you see a soldier. This soldier has all sorts of information again known about him, and also it's known that the next day he will either sit behind a desk or go and run in the field or whatever, so you know what kind of nutrition he needs for the next day. All this can be put into a program together with the personal preference of this soldier. He likes, I don't know, vanilla, and he doesn't like chocolate or whatever. He likes crunchy food and not too soft. You put this into in the software system, and this software system then calculates what this person should eat and can send that information to the printer. And the image you see on the right is what is called a mobile satellite kitchen. It's a big container that can open up, and food is prepared there in the field when the army is on a mission somewhere. So this is their sort of mobile kitchen indeed. So the idea is you take lots of personalized nutrition advice coming from not only the person self, but also from experts, dietitians and whatnot that the army employs. You feed that into an algorithm, and that provides you with a personalized, science-based personalized nutrition advice, which is then sent to the food printer. And here's a schematic of what this food printer will look like when we finish the project. So there's some conveyor belts, there's printing stations, there's an oven included to bake it, there's other filling stations to put a filling into whatever you've printed. Micronutrients can be added, macronutrients can be added. All this is done there. And then in the end, you have some kind of personalized food product, which in this case is a sort of bakery product with lots of fillings in there. And the composition of this product will be unique. So the number of calories, the type of calories, the kinds of ingredients and the amounts of ingredients that are in there. And as said, also things like flavor and texture can be personalized. So if we can do this, then it will be tested in 2 field labs. And the field labs directly coupled to 2 use cases for personalized nutrition. On the left, there's the military use case, which is performance-based. So how do these healthy people perform and act during their daily tasks? So are they able to run faster or run for longer, recover quicker after heavy strenuous exercise or not? It's tested in a military case, but of course you can directly translate that to sports in general, where people are physically active. Or in the case of people doing a lot of screen work, you can translate it into the gaming industry, for example, which is also a big industry, and where people want to be able to stay focused and absorb lots of information from the screen. So that's with healthy people. On the right is the second use case, where we have a hospital setting, and one of our partners is indeed a Dutch hospital, where we'll be testing on sick people or people that have suffered a trauma or have undergone some kind of medical procedure. And we want to check how quickly do they recover and what is their well-being when they get this personalized nutrition. So again here, this can be translated to larger groups of patients than just the ones that we do in this hospital. And you can also translate this, for example, to elderly population, where people are getting less and less fit over the years. And if you can provide them with the right kind of nutrition, can you keep them fit for longer and improve or maintain their quality of life? So these 2 use cases will use the same printer, many of the same ingredients, and on the one hand, for example, this snack for the army personnel might be high calorie because they're running around all day, high protein for muscle buildup, and maybe it has caffeine because this person has to stay awake all night because he's on guard duty and he has to stay awake, of course, and the caffeine helps with that. So the other one might be low calorie because this person will be lying down in a hospital bed, not moving very much, so you don't need a lot of calories. But you do need a lot of protein to make sure that you don't get a lot of muscle loss, because you're not moving, and if you don't move, you lose your muscles. But if you provide the right kind of protein intake, then you can prevent that to a certain degree. And for example, you may be offering high fiber or prebiotics for whatever reason. So similar kind of snacks from the outside, very different with respect to their composition. So as mentioned, this is a project that we set up 1 year ago. It's a collaborative project. We collaborate with Wageningen University in the Netherlands, which is our main partner in the area of 3D food printing. Together we are the 2 knowledge institutes involved. The Dutch Ministry of Defense and Ziekenhuis Gelderse Vallei, which is a hospital in the Netherlands, they are the field lab hosts, so they have the 2 field labs either on performance or on recovery and well-being. And then there's a group of commercial partners, among which I'm happy to say one from Japan, Nissin, is a partner since a little over half a year. And they also joined the consortium because they have a big interest indeed in personalized nutrition and what it could mean for their products and for their customers. Also, we're open to additional partners, so if there's any company out there that is interested in this kind of development, either from an equipment point of view, from a software point of view, ingredients, final products, whatever, we're open to additional partners. It's a collaborative project, as said. All the partners have their own role and task and their own applications that they're aiming for. And together we're working to really make this work, and within a year or so have this printer ready and start doing the field lab tests. As said, I want to conclude with just 1 or 2 slides on Society 5.0. Society 5.0 is, I think, pretty well known in Japan by now. It's a sort of future vision launched by the Japanese government about what the world should and could look like in some years from now. But I think it's also a vision for what the entire world will look like. And you see that more and more companies and countries are adopting this Society 5.0 vision. Society 5.0, here it says, a human-centered society that balances economic advancement with the resolution of social problems by a system that highly integrates cyberspace and physical space. The society that we're in now is called 4.0. It's an information society, but I think this goes one step further by integrating lots of technology so that indeed, as it says here, cyberspace and physical space can be merged. And if you look at all the documents that have been published on this by the Japanese government, you see a lot of keywords which are mentioned here and which I'll just highlight in blue. Things like big data, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, automatic monitoring, etc., sensors. And I think this relates very well to not only what I've been talking about, but also to Ton, who in the previous presentation also mentioned a lot of these things. So I think you see that indeed 3D food and pharma printing, but also the work going on Holst, really offers opportunities not in 10 or 20 years when Society 5.0 will arrive, but already now. Providing benefits to people by providing, in our case of 3D printing, a lot of personalization, which makes sure that the products are more fit to your body, your personality, whatever, and you benefit more from these products. I think it's really interesting to work on this topic. I've been doing it with a lot of pleasure for the last 10 years, and I hope to continue for many years more, and hopefully with some of the people here in the audience and your company. So, if there's any questions or you have ideas on what you would like to print, please ask me now or approach us later. We have a stand outside, and both me and my colleagues will be happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, thank you very much, Kjeld. We have a bit of time left, since the other parallel session is still running. We have like 15 minutes left. One question popped up when you were giving your presentation is, if I would have a rare disease, which you don't see quite often, how does the future look like, in the sense that, is it possible that I would go to a pharmacy and they have their own 3D printer and make it for me there and the pharmacy close to my home? Or is it not that easy close to my home?
I think it can be done. With rare diseases, the big challenge starts actually with finding the right drug to treat that disease. There's quite a few rare diseases out there for which there is no drug therapy available yet. To be honest, this is not something we will be solving with 3D printing. The molecule that treats the disease has to be found first. Assuming that the drug exists and indeed it's available at the pharmacy, then it's quite easy for the pharmacy to then indeed print this drug molecule into a tablet shape and then provide it to you. So that could definitely be the case. And the nice thing could be indeed, you're talking about different logistics then, they cannot have everything on stock, so they only need to have the drug compounds on stock, but they don't need to have indeed, the 5, the 10, the 20, whatever milligram tablets. They can print the right kind of dose for you, and if you need 5 tablets, then they print 5. If you need 10, then they print 10. And in that way you can also avoid that there's lots of tablets that go over their best before date and have to be thrown away, which is actually the case in a lot of pharmacies, that stuff just goes over the date and has to be thrown away, even though it's not really bad, but it's not approved anymore for usage after that. So I think also the waste that is currently occurring in the pharmaceutical industry or in the pharmacies or in people's home can also be decreased a lot.
That's about medication, and if you look at supplements with vitamins and minerals you can take, because if I look at myself, I have several pots at home, taking several supplements. Is it possible that you would have a 3D printer at home to make those supplements. Is that like affordable in the future, you would say?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at 3D printers, I was saying that TNO has been active in the 3D printing area for 30 plus years. The first 3D printer that we bought, you could have bought a very, very nice, luxurious car for that money. The same capacity of printing is now available on a printer that costs you maybe 200 euros. So you see that over the years, the cost of 3D printers have decreased enormously, also because some of the patents ran out, and that's why, you know, cheaper versions can be made. And I think the same holds true for 3D food printers. There's commercial food printers that you can buy. They typically cost in between 2,000 to 4,000 euros, but also those will become cheaper. Some people buy a printer like that for their home. I think it's a little bit expensive still for me, but I think also over the years that becomes cheaper, and printers at home will become available. And then indeed things like that will become possible. You do need not only the printer companies, but you also need ingredient companies or some other companies to provide content, cartridges that can be loaded into those printers, and together then this will lead to business models where indeed you can in the end print at home. Yes.
So imagine you could have a 3D printer at home and it's affordable for you.
Yeah.
Could you like use that for both supplements and vitamins and minerals and also on food, or is it like completely different machinery you need to use for
Yeah,
that?
it's a good question. So I showed that there's different kinds of printing technologies. You can do extrusion printing or you can do powder-based printing. We do a lot with the extrusion one. I showed the example of Nourished with the gum candies with all the minerals and vitamins. They also use extrusion printing. So with that same technology, you can do pasta, you can do chocolate, you can do meat replacement, and you can do your micronutrients, yes.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks a lot for your talk. It was very interesting, I would say.
Thank you very much.
If there are any questions to Kjeld or to Ton, they're just walking around. More of the colleagues are also here, so there's definitely time for you to, well, put a business case on the table or put some questions on the table. They're more than willing to answer that. So thanks again, Kjeld.
Thank you.